All right, we are looking at right triangle trig continued. So yesterday all we did was set up the different ratios using sine, cosine, and tangent and their appropriate sides. Today we're going to look at how we can use those same ratios to help us find the measures of different sides and different angles in these right triangles. So our first part here is going to be looking at how do we find the measure of a side if we are given an angle and another side. All right, so there's two scenarios that can happen here. First thing in either scenario is identify what information has been given to you. So do you have the opposite side? Do you have the adjacent? Do you have the hypotenuse? What sides do you have in your problem? So this is also when you're going to want to go back and think about that SOHCAHTOA that we talked about. Right? Because remember, that tells you which sides go with which function. Once you know your sides that you have, then that will help you determine for step 2 what function are you going to use. So if you have the O and the H, then you're going to use sine. If you have the A and the H, you're going to use cosine. If you had the O and the A, you're going to use tangent. Then it says if the x is located in the top or the bottom of the ratio, that's what you're going to ask. If it's in the top, right, then you will multiply by the number that's in the denominator on both sides. Right? So your problem will be set up something like this. Maybe like you have like sine 36 equals x over 15. So you notice that x is in the numerator or the top of your fraction. So to get rid of it or get it by itself, you will multiply both sides by that number that's in the bottom, which in this case is 15. Right? And then those 15s would cancel each other out there on the right. And then what you have here on the left, right, that 15 sine 36, that is what you would type into your calculator or Desmos to get your answer to that question. If your x is located in the bottom or the denominator of your ratio, then it says to switch the function that's with the angle with the variable that's in the bottom and then divide. And so that one would look something like this. Let's say we had tangent 43 equals 10 over x. So we notice that x is in the denominator or the bottom of that ratio. So I'm going to take this tangent 43 and this x, and they are going to switch places. So it would look something like this. It would be x equals 10 divided by tangent 43. And that would be what we would put in our calculator to figure out our answer. All right, so x is in the top, we multiply. X is in the bottom, we switch and divide. Okay, that takes us to then talking about what do we do if we're trying to find the measure of the angle. All right, so that was both cases on how we try to find the measure of the side. Here we want to also look at how can we find the measure of the angle. So first thing we want to do is identify what we have. So again, using that SOHCAHTOA, identify what sides we have based on our angle. That's going to tell us which function we're going to use. Okay. And then anytime we're trying to find an angle with right triangle trig, we have to do the inverse. We have to do the inverse of each of those functions, which in our calculator, that would be to hit second and sine or second and cosine or second and tangent. That's going to give you the inverse, which is like sine -1 or cosine -1 or tangent -1. Right? Those all represent the sine, cosine, and tangent inverse, right? Which is what we have to use anytime we're trying to find a angle. One other point I'll make before we start doing some examples is with all of these problems, you must be in degrees, right, or degree mode, because all of these angles we are measuring are all in degrees. And I'll show you what that means and what that looks like when we look at some examples and we look at how we put these in Desmos or how we put them in the calculator. All right, so looking at our examples that we're going to start with here, it says find the value of x for each of the following. If needed, round your answers to the nearest hundredth. Right? Remember, hundredth is talking about 2 decimal places. To start any of these problems, right, we want to first identify the angle that we have. All right, so I'm going to circle it. So 28 is the angle that we're looking at. 28 is our angle. Then I use that to help me decide of the sides that they've given us, what sides are they? Are they opposite? Are they adjacent? Are they hypotenuse? Because then that is going to take me to whether or not, what from SOHCAHTOA I'm going to use, right, to be able to figure out that side or that angle. So if 28 is my angle, I notice x is across from that angle. So x is the opposite side to that angle. Looking at 28, if I see where 35 is related to 28, it is next to 28. So that must mean that 35 is the adjacent side. So if I have the opposite and the adjacent, I go to my SOHCAHTOA, and that's the O and the A, which goes with T. T stands for tangent. So if I set my problem up, it's going to be tangent of 28 equals my opposite side, which is x, because O comes first, over my adjacent side, which is 35, because A comes second. Next, I notice that my x is in the top. We said if our x is in the top, we're going to multiply by the number that's in the denominator on both sides. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 35. 35s are going to cancel there on that right-hand side, leaving with just an x. And then I'm going to go into Desmos or my calculator, and I'm going to type in 35 tangent 28. All right, so let's see what that looks like. All right, so in our calculator, okay, first thing I want to talk about is making sure that we are in degree mode. All right, so to do that, you're going to hit the second button and the mode button. Second mode, or excuse me, not second, just hit the mode button. Let me get that right. Right, hit the mode button. Right, so just the mode button, which is right up there next to the second. And then as you go down to that third line there, you see where it says radian and it says the word degree. You want to make sure that in your calculator or your that you highlight the degrees. So I arrowed over, I highlight it, and I'm going to hit enter. So then it now changes my calculator out of radian mode to degree mode, because we need to be in degrees to do all of these questions, right? So that was under my mode button. So mode, go down to that third line, make sure that it says the word degree there, right? And that is highlighted, not radians. All right, once you've done that, then we're going to go out of here. So we do that by hitting second mode. And we said we wanted to type in 35 tangent 28. So I'm going to type in 35. And right kind of in the middle of your calculator, you'll see that sine, cosine, and tangent buttons. All right, they're kind of right in the middle of that in your calculator. And we wanted tangent, so I'm going to select tangent. and then type in 28 and hit enter, and it's going to give me that answer. And we said we needed to round this to the nearest hundredth, which is the second decimal place. So I go to the second one, there's that 0. I look behind it, it's a 9. 9 is going to round that 0 up to a 1. 9 is going to round that 0 up to a 1. So we're going to have 18.61. 18.61. Let me show you what this also looks like from a Desmos perspective. I would strongly encourage you when you're doing these in Desmos to use the testing version for North Carolina. Because if you do that, you don't have to worry about changing your calculator to degrees. Right? If you go over to the little wrench up in that top right corner, Desmos in the testing version is default to degrees. You see how that degrees there is highlighted. So you don't even have to worry about changing that. It is already defaulted for you. All right, so just know that. The testing version defaults to degrees, so you don't have to worry about changing it. So just like with the other one, okay, we're going to type in exactly what we see there, 35, tangent 28. So 35. Right? You could just type in TAN, all right, for tangent, or you can go under functions, all right, and under that functions menu, you see right there, you have your 3 trig functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. So I'll select tangent and then type in 28. And again, we get the same answer there. Go to that second decimal place, that 0, look behind it, it's a 9. That 9 is going to round that 0 up to a 1. All right, let's go to the next one. Always start with our angle because our angle helps us decide what sides we have so we know which function to use. So here, x is my angle. All right, I look at the right angle there, and I see across from that right angle is that 35, so that tells me 35 is hypotenuse. If I'm looking at x, 16 is next to that x. All right, if it's next to it, that makes it adjacent. I have that A and I have the H. If I look at my SOHCAHTOA, A and H are next to C. C stands for cosine. All right, so when I set this one up, it's going to be cosine of my angle, which is x, equals, right? A comes first, so that's going to go on the top. That's 16. Then H is 35. If I look at where my x is located, it is my angle. So let's go back up here. How to find the measure of an angle. Decide what function. We already did that. Then it says we have to do the inverse. All right, we have to do the inverse anytime we're trying to find our angle. So I'm going to do cosine inverse of both sides because my function is cosine. On that left-hand side, that cosine inverse and that cosine cancel each other out, leaving us with just an x. And then on that right-hand side, this is what we're going to put in our calculator or Desmos. We're going to put inverse cosine 16 over 35. Right, so I'll do it first in the calculator. Right, in the calculator, to do your inverses, you have to hit the second button first, and then you have to select which of the functions you're going to use, whether it's sine, cosine, or tangent. We said this time we needed cosine, so I hit cosine. And then I'm going to type in 16 divided by 35. Hit enter, and it's going to give me that answer. we need to the nearest hundredth. So I go to that second decimal place is the 9. I look behind it, that's a 7. So that 7's going to round up that 9, which actually then ends up rounding up that 7 to an 8. So we're looking at 62.80. 62.80. 62.80 degrees, because this one was an angle. This one was an angle. Let's go see what it looks like in Desmos. All right, I'm going to clear that first one out. In Desmos, to get that inverse, all right, go under that functions menu, right, and you see right there at the top, it has your inverse trig functions. We needed cosine, so I'm going to select cosine, 16 divided by 35. And again, we see we get that answer. We were the same one we got from the calculator. All right, we'll keep going. And so again, anytime you're looking at these, solving by trig, you want to start with where's the angle, because that angle is going to help you determine what sides you have. So 24 is my angle here in example C. If I look at 19, 19 is next to 24, so that makes it adjacent. If I look at x, x is across from that angle, so that makes this opposite. If I think about in my SOHCAHTOA, I have an O and I have an A because I have opposite and adjacent. That goes with T. T stands for tangent. So we're going to have tangent of our angle, which is 24, equals O comes first, so that's X. It goes on the top. A comes second. That goes on the bottom. That's 19. This time, my X is in the top of this ratio. So we said when it was in the top, we multiply both sides by the number that's in the bottom. So I'm going to go times 19 on both sides. 19s are going to cancel. Then I'm going to go into Desmos or my calculator, and I'm going to type in 19 tangent 24. 19 tangent 24. So I'm going to do Desmos here. 19, go to functions, select tangent 24. I'm going to go to that second decimal place is the 5. I'll look behind it, it's a 9. That 9's going to round that 5 up to a 6. So it's going to be 8.46. All right, example D. Again, start at your angle. My angle is 39. I look at X. X is next to that angle, so that makes this adjacent. Look at 15. 15 is across from that angle, so that makes it opposite. If I think about my SOHCAHTOA, O and A again goes with tangent. Right, that's the T. So tangent of our angle, which is 39, equals O comes first, so that's 15 over A, which is X. So this brings one we haven't done yet. What happens when that X is in the bottom of that ratio? If it is in the bottom of that ratio, we said that we're going to take that tangent or that function in the angle and that variable, and we're going to have them switch places. Right? They're going to switch places. So we're going to end up with x equals 15 divided by tangent 39. 15 divided by tangent 39. And that is what we're going to put in Desmos to see what our answer is. 15 divided by tangent 39. $15 divided by, go to functions, select tangent 39. Go to that second decimal place, it's a 2. I look behind it, it's a 3. That 3 does not do anything to that 2. So we're looking at 18.52. X equals 18.52. I'll just show you how it would look in the calculator. 15 divided by, select tangent 39, hit enter. All right, got a couple more we'll do together. Letter E, again, circle that angle. Use it to help you decide what sides you have. Looking at 62, seeing that X is next to that 62, so X must be adjacent. Now you also might have thought 60 might be adjacent as well because it was next to the 62, but if you look, that 60 is across from that right angle, right? That 60 is across from that right angle, that must mean this is the hypotenuse. So we have A and H this time. A and H goes with C, which is cosine. So we're going to have cosine 62 equals, A comes first, so it's going to go on the top. That's X. Hypotenuse comes second. That's going to go on the bottom. That's 60. I'll look at where my X is located. It is in the top of that ratio. We said when it's in the top of that ratio, we want to multiply both sides by the number that's in the denominator, which is 60. Those 60s cancel each other out, leaves us with just an X. And we're going to go into Desmos, our calculator, and we're going to put in 60 cosine 62. 60 cosine 62. 60, go to functions, cosine 62. Go to that second decimal place, it's a 6. I look behind it, it's an 8. That 8 is going to round that 6 up to a 7. So we're looking at 28.17. 28.17. Letter F. Again, circle our angle. Our angle is X this time. If I look at the 5, that 5 is next to that X, makes it adjacent. If I look at the 8 is across from that X, which makes it opposite. We have O and A. O and A goes with tangent. So we're going to have tangent of our angle, which is X, equals, right? O comes first, so it's going to go on the top, that's 8. A comes second, that's going to go on the bottom, that's 5. This time, our X is our angle. If our X is our angle, we said we had to do inverse. So I'm going to do tangent inverse of both sides. That's going to mean that tangent inverse and that tangent on the left-hand side cancel out, leaves us with just an X. And then we're going to go in our calculator, we're going to type in tangent inverse of 8/5. Tangent inverse of 8/5. So I'm going to functions, select under inverse functions, select the tangent, and do 8 divided by 5. Go to that second decimal place, it's a 9. I look behind it and see the 4. The 4 does not do anything to the 9. So we're looking at 57.99. .99 degrees, because this was an angle in this problem. Okay, letter G, started our angle, which is 36. Looking at 10 compared to 36, it's across from it, so 10 is opposite. Looking at 36 and comparing with X, we may think that it's adjacent, all right, but it's not, because if I look at how it relates to the right angle, it's across from the right angle, which means it has to be hypotenuse. Okay, so don't let that confuse you. We have O and H. O and H go with S, which is sine. So sine of our angle, which is 36, equals, O comes first, so it's going to come on the top. That's 10. Then hypotenuse, that's X. My X is located in my denominator. So this time I'm going to take that sine of 36 and that X and have them switch places. And that's going to give us 10 divided by sine 36. And then that's what I'm going to go into Desmos or my calculator, and I'm going to put in 10 divided by sine 36. 10 divided by sine 36. Hit enter. Go to that second decimal, it's a 1. I look behind it, I see a 3. The 3 is not going to do anything to the 1. So we're looking at 17.01. 17.01. Okay, the last one I'm going to do with you. All right, again, start with your angle, which in this case is X. Looking at my different sides, I might think that 14 is adjacent, but if I look at how it compares to the right angle, it's across from that right angle, making it hypotenuse. If I look at 5, 5 is next to that X, so that does make 5 the adjacent side. I have A and H. A and H go with C, which is cosine. So we have cosine of our angle, which is X, equals, A comes first, so it's going to go on top, that's 5. Then H, that's 14. We're trying to find our angle. Anytime we're trying to find our angle, we said we have to do inverse. So we're going to have inverse cosine of both sides. That cosine inverse and that cosine cancel each other out. Leaves us with just an X. And we're going to go Desmos or our calculator. We're going to type in inverse cosine of 5/14. I'm going to go to Desmos. Go under that functions menu. Select cosine 5 divided by 14. Go to that second decimal is a 7. I look behind it, I see a 5. That 5 is going to round up that 7 to an 8. So 69.08. right? And that is degrees because again, X was our angle this time. All right, you have 4 more examples right here in your notes. You need to do those 4 on your own, and then you need to go into Canvas, and if you go under today's date, you'll see our teacher notes, my teacher notes, and I will have the answer key to these notes that show you if you did these next 4 right, all right? Don't just go in there and copy them down. Actually go in there, try these 4 on your own, then go to the teacher's notes under Canvas and see if you got these 4 right. Okay, once you've done that, then you can continue on to completing your homework for this section.